The Bohemian Tower belonged to the Elemental School, a sect that devoted itself to the study of elemental magic. Though it had risen to prominence only recently, its reputation already shook the empire. Deep in the underground dungeon of the Magic Tower, coarse breathing echoed through the darkness. "At this rate, insert the stimulant once more," someone said coldly. Moments later, a piercing scream tore through the dungeon. 461 seconds, a man noted with satisfaction. Longer than the last reagent. As expected, talented experimental subjects truly are different. Bound in heavy chains, a boy covered in deep slashes and open wounds lay trembling. His blood soaked into the engraved magic circle beneath him. He was the experimental subject, the one upon whom the mages of the tower, along with the tower master himself, conducted their cruel tests. The mages circled him, carefully observing the results of the memory-expanding stimulant they had forced into his body. This was the strongest magic tower in the empire. And here, within its depths, the boy was dying. Why had someone like him, praised for having a gifted mind, ended up like this? The experiment began again. His screams filled the dungeon as pain tore through him. He begged them to stop, his voice breaking, but the tower master merely turned away. "Report the results once the experiment is complete," he said flatly before leaving. Left behind, the boy knelt in chains, blood flowing freely as it pooled within the magic circle. A bitter thought crossed his mind. "I'm dying, in a magic tower. A place I once dreamed of reaching." Suddenly, someone grabbed his hair violently and forced his head up. "So, how does it feel, Verdun?" the man sneered. "You had no talent as a mage, yet you got arrogant just because people praised you for being smart." Jealousy dripped from his voice. "You're nothing but a lab rat now. An insect with not a shred of magic power, can't even break a single chain. No reactions at all," he laughed. "Perfect for a rank S experimental subject." The mages spoke mockingly about the friend who had entered the tower alongside him, Rovelin, the one who had been sponsored to study abroad. They pitied her for ever having a friend like him. Their laughter echoed endlessly. Verdun lowered his head. For what reason? Why am I being tortured like this? He already knew the answer. Everything happening to him now was because he was weak. Verdun recalled that all of this had begun 15 years ago. He grew up in an orphanage, having no parents to call his own. From the very beginning, he had only one dream: to become an incredible mage. In pursuit of that dream, he entered the magic tower not as a student, but as a mere worker hoping to learn magic from within its walls. No matter how hard he tried, he could not become a mage. The reason was cruelly simple: growth limit, rank 1. That was the result of the mage compatibility test he took at the age of 7. It meant he would never surpass that limit. In other words, he could never truly wield magic. Talentless. That single word became his sentence. Even so, he could not abandon his dream. Becoming a mage was all he had. While working as a manual laborer in the tower, he secretly peeked into spellbooks left behind in empty rooms. He studied fragments of countless tomes scattered throughout the tower's library. Though his magic power was pitiful, he was confident in one thing: his intelligence. Years passed. One day, a mage professor called him a genius. For the first time, Verdun was acknowledged. He was appointed as a researcher of the Magic Tower. A senior researcher praised the theory Verdun had developed, unable to believe that a mere assistant could conceive such ideas. It was a theory worthy of recognition, even by the tower master himself. That day, Verdun realized a truth he had never known before. His intelligence was not merely talent. It was genius level. He thanked the man, Lukid, and said the thesis still needed to be proven before presentation. Lukid stopped him and asked if he had shown it to anyone else. Verdun said no. Lukid was the first. Lukid smiled. The only researcher Verdun trusted had acknowledged him. Verdun believed he would finally remain in the tower, not as a laborer but as a scholar of magic. He was wrong. Lukid presented the thesis as his own. By the time Verdun realized the truth, it was already submitted to the tower master. He pleaded, insisting the thesis had gone missing the day before the presentation. But no one believed him. The tower master asked calmly, "Are you claiming to be the author of the multidimensional continuity theory?" Verdun thought the esteemed master of the Bohemian Tower, Balrog Basquiat, would never allow such injustice. He was wrong again. Balrog merely smiled and said he had never imagined such talent among ordinary researchers. From that day on, Verdun's life ended. The tower master ordered him to come to the laboratory 2 days later, when the moon was shrouded. From that night onward, nothing was the same. If he had fled the tower then, Could he have lived a normal life? Instead, he was imprisoned. By day, he worked as a laborer. By night, he became a test subject. He was abused, threatened, and chained. Experiments were intensified whenever he resisted. Potions were injected into his veins. New drugs were tested on his body. He was forced to create magic circles that violated established theories, solely for their research. Even if he spoke the truth, no one would believe him. The Tower Master threatened everyone he cared about. Everything was over. In the darkness, Verdun remembered the orphanage. He remembered chasing after his childhood friend Rovelin. They had once promised to become mages together. If only his growth potential had been slightly higher, he could have lived happily as a mage. But that was nothing more than a fleeting dream. He cried in the dark. Then he heard it again, the sound he always heard during experiments. A crushed ant. It spoke. Is this truly the end? The ants gathered, forming a humanoid shape like his own. For revenge and survival, it said, endure again and again. Be reborn. Surpass your limits. Verdun answered quietly. Yes. With newfound resolve he stood. For 7 years he had sharpened the blade of revenge. Intelligence alone was not enough. If fate denied him power, then he would defy fate itself. His chamber filled with magic circles as he refined his theories. He would reconstruct the body itself, a method never seen before. The theory of defying heaven. Tomorrow he would break his limits. With unwavering determination, Verdun carved the final magic circle once more. After completing the magic circle, Verdun stood up and put on his shirt. Only one thing remained, to prove his theory. To do that, he needed an artifact that would allow him to cast magic just once. Even if his magicless body shattered in the process, he would not stop. With unwavering determination in his eyes, he prepared himself. Tomorrow evening, I reclaim my freedom. The next day, Verdun walked behind a mage who hurled insults at him, calling him trash. The mage ordered him to clean the alchemy lab and warned him not to slack off, especially with the magic festival approaching. After yelling one last time, the mage left. Verdun merely nodded and continued working. While cleaning, a familiar voice called out from behind. It was Rovelin, his childhood friend. He asked why she was here. Rovelin said she had come to say goodbye before leaving. Verdun calmly replied that he already knew. She was going to study abroad in the magic city of Virant, a privilege reserved only for the tower's most exceptional talents. He congratulated her sincerely. Rovelin hesitated, then said her offer still stood. She urged him to come with her, to leave this place behind, to escape arrogant fools who looked down on him, and to find new opportunities in Virant. She spoke at length. Verdun listened silently. Then, with a gentle smile, he said he would stay. Rovelin didn't understand why, but she knew she couldn't force him. She promised to write letters and soon departed in a carriage. Verdun watched her leave. She didn't know the truth, what he had endured, what had been done to him. Still, he was grateful. At least she wouldn't be caught up in what he was about to do. Night fell. The magic festival began, a globally celebrated holiday marking the construction of the first magic tower and the revival of magic. It was the busiest day of the year. Once the festival started, all high-ranking mages left for the major cities, leaving only low-ranking mages behind. Verdun carried tea to the administrator guarding the artifact vault. The administrator glared at him. Why are you here? If this isn't important, I'll beat you half to death. Verdun replied calmly that the Tower Master had ordered him to clean the treasure vaults. The administrator scoffed, calling him an idiot for not getting permission beforehand, but allowed him inside, warning him not to scratch or lose anything. Verdun entered the vault and immediately activated a silence artifact, sealing off all sound. It begins now. In the lower vault lay the artifact he needed, protected by a 7-circle magic barrier personally created by the Tower Master. It was an artificial artifact crafted at an astronomical cost, capable of triple casting and temporarily awakening the latent talent of its wielder. Verdun needed that staff. For 7 years he had studied this magic circle. The Tower Master's proudest creation would be broken tonight. After countless calculations, and 7 years of pain, it finally gave way. Elsewhere, 2 mages were drinking while guarding the tower's power source, complaining that they were stuck on duty while others enjoyed the festival. Verdun knocked. They ordered him to bring more alcohol and return to their conversation. Silently, Verdun activated the artifact. In an instant, one mage was slain, his neck pierced by a spell. The other mage screamed in shock, unable to comprehend how a magicless rat could do this. He rushed forward, activating rank 3 magic, Tidal Wave. Verdun raised his staff. Rank 3 magic, Earth Spear. Massive boulders formed and pierced through the tidal wave, crushing the spell before surging forward. The spear impaled the mage's chest. As he died, the mage cursed him. How can a mere rank 1 cast magic? Verdun answered coldly, how can you be shocked? I was your test subject. He warned him that both the tower, and those within it, would fall. Verdun ascended to the chamber they had been guarding. The power source of the magic tower. 7 years had led to this moment. He opened his shirt as magic circles spread across his body. If he didn't try now, he would never know. With the artifact and the power source resonating together, he activated the spell. Heavenly Fine, Body Reform. Mana surged violently. The power source roared to life, flooding him with endless energy. The entire tower lit up, its brilliance visible from afar. Far away, the tower master saw it. Someone had trespassed into his magic tower. And everything was about to change. The entire magic tower and its surrounding area lay in ruins. Amidst the rubble, faint coughing could be heard. Broken stones shifted as Verdun struggled to rise. His body screamed in pain, but he was alive. The body reformation had succeeded. The artifact, however, was gone, reduced to dust. From a distance, an overwhelming pressure surged toward him. Verdun sensed it instantly. The tower master was coming. Moments later, Balrog Beshes arrived, his rage exploding outward as he blasted the area with magic. But Verdun was already gone. All that remained was a fading teleportation circle etched into the shattered ground. Balrog stared at it, his teeth grinding in fury. He didn't know who had done this. But he swore that whoever it was, even if it were the Emperor himself, he would hunt them down and kill them. His roar echoed through the ruins. Far away, in a quiet forest untouched by chaos, Verdun awoke as cold water brushed against his face. He gasped and sat up, disoriented. He didn't recognize the place. Kneeling by the river, he caught his reflection and froze. His appearance had changed. His once black hair had turned ashen, and his dark pupils were now clear blue, glowing faintly under the moonlight. He realized it must have happened during the body reconstruction. Before the tower master could locate him, he had escaped using teleportation magic. And not just anywhere. The unfamiliar plants and strange atmosphere told him the truth. He had successfully fled the Bohemian Tower, teleporting across half the continent. Verdun began to laugh. At first softly. Then uncontrollably. He laughed at his freedom. At the suffering he had finally escaped. At the image of the tower master staring at his destroyed tower, unable to understand who had done it, never realizing that his so-called lab rat had slipped through his fingers. Of course, this alone was not enough to destroy the tower. Balrog Beshes was called the Omnipotent One for a reason. But this was enough, for now. While the tower was rebuilt, Verdun would grow stronger. Raising his hands to the sky, he made a vow. He would destroy everything the tower master had built, right before his eyes. He would carve his name into history. Revenge, and proving himself as a mage. That was now the sole purpose of his life. Sometime later, deep within the forest, a goblin rummaged through fallen crates scattered across the ground. A sharp sound cut through the air. Windcutter. Verdun appeared in an instant, and the goblin was cleaved apart in a single strike. He stood still, observing his body. This was a test. Yet strangely he felt no different than before. Aside from his ashen hair and clear blue eyes, everything else, his face, his mana capacity, remained the same. An error during reconstruction, he muttered. He approached the goblin's corpse and frowned. Goblins roaming freely meant only one thing. He was far from any village. Not far away, he noticed skid marks carved into the dirt. Activating mana detection, he followed the faint traces. Ahead, a man could be heard screaming at his horses, urging them to run faster as his cart rattled through the forest. The man's mind raced as he recalled what had led him here. Bandits had ambushed them earlier. Negotiations failed. His companions fled in terror. That alone was manageable, but then an orc appeared, wearing a twisted, unsettling smile. The orc and surrounding monsters slaughtered the bandits, and amid the chaos, the man escaped. Now fate caught up with him. The cart wheels jammed against a rock, throwing him to the ground. He staggered up, only to see a horde of monsters closing in. His legs trembled as he stepped back. This was the end. The monsters lunged. He shut his eyes. Earthwall. The ground erupted, sealing him inside a thick earthen barrier from all sides, blocking the monsters completely. Confused and gasping, the man realized he was still alive. Above, standing on a small cliff, was Verdun. Oops, Verdun muttered. Forgot to leave an air hole. He glanced at the struggling monsters, then locked eyes with the orc, whose creepy smile twisted into rage. I'll clean this up quickly, Verdun said casually, flames igniting in his palm. Before he suffocates. The monsters roared and charged at him. Verdun smiled faintly. This was perfect. A chance to test his abilities, and a proper beginning to his new life. Verdun's magic set the forest ablaze where the goblins had surrounded him. With a swift chant, he unleashed multi-flame arrows. Dozens of burning projectiles rained down, setting goblins screaming as they were burned alive. Amid the chaos, the creepy smiling orc merely stared at him, still smiling. It raised its hand and ordered the remaining goblins to attack. Verdun didn't give them the chance. He cast multi-flame arrows again, and at the same time whirlwind. It was double casting, executed at astonishing speed. The spells fused. Heat wave arrow. Numerous magic circles formed in midair, and blazing arrows descended like judgment. Each impact caused a massive explosion, wiping out the goblins and the orcs with overwhelming force. When the final blast faded, rain began to fall, extinguishing the burning forest. Verdun stood still, stunned. Before his body reconstruction, he wouldn't have been able to defeat even a single goblin. Now, nothing remained. He turned his attention back to the man trapped within the earth wall. He had to release him quickly. If the man suffocated, coming this far would have been meaningless. Just as Verdun prepared to dispel the spell, the creepy smiling orc stood back up. Its body regenerated rapidly, flesh knitting together as it lunged toward him. Verdun's eyes widened. So one survived. Without hesitation he fired a wind cutter. The blade of compressed air sliced cleanly through the orc's neck. The head fell. The smile vanished. At last, the creepy smiling orc was truly dead. Later, the man could be seen riding his horse cart, laughing loudly. "My name is Conrad," he said cheerfully. "I'll never forget what happened today. You saved my life, truly. Thank you." Verdun sat quietly at the back of the cart, watching the road. Conrad asked how he could ever repay such a debt. Verdun replied coldly, "Keep your eyes on the path, or you'll flip the carriage again." Conrad laughed and asked another question, whether Verdun had ever been in danger when facing that horde of monsters. He apologized if it was a stupid question, laughing even harder. He talks too much, Verdun thought, irritated. Still, he didn't deny it. That orc attacking from behind had been dangerous. If he hadn't reacted in time with Wind Cutter, it could have ended badly. But aloud, he simply said there was nothing to worry about. He then asked Conrad whether thieves appeared often in this area. From what he knew, bandits usually avoided regions where beasts were common. Conrad shook his head. This was his first time encountering them here. The forest was under the control of Baron Pythe. When Conrad was younger, he had exchanged letters with him and knew that bandits in the area had supposedly been wiped out. That was why he had traveled without hiring expensive mercenaries. "It seems my luck ran out today," Conrad said. "Bandits and monsters." Verdun narrowed his eyes. "So my teleportation didn't fail. I arrived in the right place. If this was Baron Pythe's territory, it was ideal. The Bohemian magic tower might be searching for him. He needed to hide his identity and grow stronger. Only then did he realize he hadn't introduced himself. "My name is Asher," he said. "The day I use the name Verdun again, he thought, will be the day I face the Tower Master." Within Baron Pythe's territory, the Baron himself came out upon seeing Conrad's disheveled state. "What happened to you?" Conrad smiled and casually lied, saying he had gotten lost and fallen from his cart while fleeing from an ox. The Baron apologized for the bandits and beasts, but Conrad waved it off, saying it wasn't his fault. Then the Baron turned to Asher. "So you're the mage who saved my friend," he said warmly. "Please enter the castle. A feast will be prepared." Asher entered the castle and thanked him for the clothes, food, and lodging. At dinner, the Baron introduced himself again. "I am Baron Pythe Henrod, ruler of this territory. Please take a seat." He asked if Asher's name was correct and whether the food suited his taste. "It's good," Asher replied. The Baron smiled and expressed his gratitude for saving Conrad. He offered 5 million elk as a reward and said that if Asher needed anything else he should ask. Then, somewhat hesitantly, he made another request. "If it's not too much, I would like to hire you for a job. I promise even greater compensation." Asher considered it. He needed money and combat experience. "What kind of job?" he asked. The Baron explained that days earlier bodies had been found hanging in the southern forest, villagers from a nearby farm town. The town itself was in ruins. Investigations pointed to bandits, but when they searched, all traces had vanished as if erased by magic. It's possible they have a mage, Asher said calmly. The Baron nodded and told him the hunt would begin in 4 days. 4 days later, crowds gathered near the castle walls. A knight stepped forward. I am Enoch, commander of this operation and knight of Baron Pythe. He introduced the others, Harris, black-haired and stern, and Perry, young but sharp. They greeted Asher politely, and Asher returned the greeting. Asher noticed another group nearby and asked who they were. Adventurers, Enoch replied. They came after rumors of a strange orc. The reward is high, even gold-rank adventurers are here. Gold rank, on par with ordinary knights. Warriors who enhanced their bodies and weapons with energy. Rumors said they could even cleave mountains. If they still need me, Asher thought, then there really is a mage among the bandits. Enoch asked Asher to inform them if he sensed one. Asher replied, why ask me? Don't you need me? Enoch explained that Tier 2 mages were comparable to knights, but once long-range spells came into play, closing the distance became nearly impossible. Ideally, they wouldn't face a mage at all. That's unfortunate, Asher said. Enoch blinked in surprise. Then Asher stepped forward suddenly. There's a magic circle ahead. Before anyone could react, he raised his hand. Harden. With a single motion, the camouflage spell shattered, revealing a massive hidden magic circle beneath it. Gasps spread through the group. It was a warning and concealment formation. Stay back, Asher said calmly. He waved his hand once more. The entire magic barrier was torn apart. Enoch stared in disbelief. What kind of mage is this man? Explorers, also known as adventurers, *** belonged to guilds that accepted commissions across the continent. They explored uncharted lands and repelled monsters that threatened human settlements. Death always walked beside them, yet people admired them. Skill brought wealth and survival brought fame. However, when an adventurer grew so strong through countless near-death experiences that they lost control, when they turned their blades toward fellow humans, consumed by greed and abandoning honor, they were no longer adventurers. They became bandits. One such former adventurer cursed loudly beside the corpse of a fallen monster. Standing near him was a mage. The damage from Pythe's raid party hasn't even been cleaned up yet, the man snarled. And now orcs and goblins are attacking us? We're out of food too. He barked orders at his subordinates to go hunt something, anything. Unbeknownst to them, Enoch and his party were hidden nearby, watching in silence. They lay in ambush, waiting for Enoch's signal. Enoch observed their careless movements. They're off guard, he whispered. We strike now. Wait, Asher said quietly. Enoch glanced at him. They have a mage, Asher continued calmly. And so do we. I'm here as a countermeasure, but we don't know their mage's strength yet. If his magic circle is higher than mine, we risk losing. He paused, then added, there's another way. Enoch nodded. They waited. Back at the camp, the former adventurer continued ranting. He complained that he had poured everything into expanding their operational area, only for the subordinates he recruited from nearby villages to end up dead. The mage beside him sighed. Enough complaining. Let's think of a countermeasure. The man scoffed. His name was Vudra. Who would have thought some clown-like orc would wipe out our people? He spat. Back when I was an explorer, I never imagined things would turn out like this. His voice softened for a moment. If only I hadn't been caught killing another explorer for money. I miss those days. Vudra had been expelled from the Adventurers Guild. Now he lived as a mercenary, a hired blade. We should attack another village, Vudra said. The mage shook his head. No. The Baron is furious about the bodies we hung from the trees. We've hidden ourselves with concealment magic, but his forces will move soon. He continued, there's a city nearby, Martis. We'll plunder a village near there instead. Before Vudra could reply, a firebolt slammed into the ground beside them. Boom. The explosion tore through the clearing. Flames surged outward. The mage reacted instantly, erecting a protective barrier. That was magic, he shouted. Not a normal explosion. His eyes widened. We've been discovered. At that moment, Enoch and his knights charged, blades drawn, spells igniting, the ambush finally unleashed. The mage spat blood as his mana barrier shattered. Mana barrier was a defensive spell with fast casting speed, but it lacked durability. When it broke, the backlash sent a violent shock through the caster's body. The mage staggered, blood dripping from his mouth. So that white-haired one is a mage, they realized. Asher spoke calmly, We now know their strength. I'll take the mage. Sir Enoch nodded without hesitation. Do as you wish, Sir Asher. He turned to face the mercenary. The mercenary gritted his teeth. So the Baron really wants us dead, hiding a mage and all. He charged forward. Steel clashed as Sir Enoch and the mercenary crossed blades. The mercenaries snarled, threatening to send their heads to the Baron as a warning. Sir Enoch smiled faintly. If you think you can, he replied. Their duel began. Elsewhere, the enemy mage fled, sprinting through the forest. Asher pursued him relentlessly, erecting earth walls to cut off his escape. The mage clicked his tongue. An earth mage. Only third circle mages or higher can fly. Believing Asher to be second circle at most, the mage suddenly stopped and turned. How long do you plan on chasing me? He sneered. He raised his staff and cast multi-ice arrows, launching the spell first to gain the advantage. Asher responded instantly. Multi-flame arrows. Dozens of spells collided midair. Ice shattered like glass, fire erupted, and a massive explosion carved a deep crater into the ground. The mage staggered back, breathing heavily. Not bad, for a second circle mage. But you picked the wrong opponent. If you'd stayed with the knights, I'd be at a disadvantage, he continued. But I can handle you alone and escape. I have no intention of letting you go, Asher replied coldly. The mage laughed. Your confidence suits your talent. Complex attribute magic at your age, it's rare. Then his expression turned cruel. But you never thought you'd be crushed here today, did you? He activated third circle magic, falling ice. A massive ice mountain formed in the sky, descending straight toward Asher. At the last moment, the mountain stopped. The mage froze in disbelief. Asher had halted it with earth magic alone. Before the mage could react. A spear. A massive spear pierced through the ice mountain, shattering it into fragments that rained down like shattered stars. The mage's eyes widened. Earth spear? That's third circle. How can a second circle? Take a guess, Asher said calmly. Then he activated another spell. Ice spear. The mage's mind went blank. For attributes? Third circle magic? He had been deceived from the start. The ice spear pierced through his chest. The mage fell lifelessly to the ground. Asher wiped the blood from his face. It's a good thing I came, he said quietly. That mage would have been troublesome. He had learned something valuable today. How to fight and kill a mage. Elsewhere, far from the battlefield, an orc with a clown smile can be seen. A gold badge hung from his neck, the proof of another explorer he had slain. Every adventurer who came searching for him had been massacred.